Even though on Wednesday Donald Trump invoked the Defense Production Act, which would allow him to force American companies to produce critically necessary medical supplies in order to fight the coronavirus pandemic, he's really been dragging his foot when it comes to actually using the powers that he has invoked for himself, arguing instead that states are the ones who best understand their supply chain and so can best procure the relevant medical supplies. He's receiving a ton of criticism from this, including from a number of governors who argue that that's simply not the case. But this has led a number of companies to step up and say that they would be willing to produce ventilators in order to combat. Elon Musk, probably the most eccentric one to do so, saying, "We will make ventilators if there is a shortage." Guys, there already is a shortage. You can see right here, we've known that there's a shortage for a really long time. Elon Musk digging himself into an even bigger grave here, saying Tesla makes cars with sophisticated systems, SpaceX makes spacecrafts with life support systems. Ventilators are not difficult, but cannot be produced instantly. Which hospitals have these shortages that you speak of? Elon Musk dragging his feet as well, leading Benjamin Dixon here to hit him, saying billionaires are useless. Elon Musk has received both criticism and praise, but a number of criticism from the left, I'd say, just saying like, dude, there is a shortage. Just do it if you say you're going to do it. It seems like Elon Musk is really waiting around for the government to take action. Now, when it comes to other companies, Larry Kudlow, who works in the White House, has said that he has been in talks with the CEO of GM, who has said that she would be willing to open some shutdown factories and bring in some workers in order to build these ventilators. But again, we seem to be in a situation where, yes, they seem to be willing to do it, but they want to actually be ordered to do it. They don't just want to do it, if that makes sense. So that seems to be the situation that we're in, which is why Donald Trump has been facing a lot of criticism for it. Nancy Pelosi hitting Donald Trump, saying, "The president must immediately use the powers of the Defense Production Act to mass produce and coordinate distribution of these critical supplies before the need worsens and the shortage becomes even more dire. There is not a day to lose," Nancy Pelosi says. "We must put more testing, protective equipment, and more ventilators into the hands of frontline workers immediately." And this does seem to be the case. We're already seeing a number of hospitals considering that they're shutting down. There was a hospital in Minnesota. It was, I believe, a community hospital in Minnesota who is already in talks with the state government saying that, look, if you don't get us some supplies, we're going to have to shut down because we are out of supplies. We don't have the relevant resources in order to protect our staff, in order to keep our staff safe, in order to, treat the relevant patients coming in. This is already a disaster happen. I mean, we're just a few days away, it seems, from things really spiking. We've just crossed 15,000 cases of the coronavirus, confirmed cases. The number of cases is likely to be much, much higher than that. There was an Ohio health official speculating that Ohio may have already reached the critical 1% threshold where it becomes essentially impossible to stop the spread of, which would mean, if that's true, that 100,000 people are possibly infected in Ohio alone. Now, I'm going to be honest, I think that that number might be a little bit high, and you do need to keep in mind when you say that those numbers are already infected. With that long incubation period, you can say, yes, they might be infected, but they're not showing symptoms yet. So, I think that that number might be a little bit high, but they have run simulations, have run models, and 1% seems to be on the sort of worst end of things for just Ohio alone. But what I'm trying to say is these numbers are not good at all. And of course, the economy is falling off a cliff. Andrew Cuomo also responding to Donald Trump here, saying, "Every state is shopping for ventilators. We're shopping for ventilators. We literally have people in China shopping for ventilators, which is one of the largest manufacturers. So this is a problem." Basically, states seem to be unable to actually procure the relevant supplies that they need to procure. And so even I've seen some governors of conservative states saying, "Look, Donald Trump, we really need you to do this. Only the federal government has the buying power. Only the federal government has the leverage. Only the federal government in this instance has the ability to actually control the supply chain in an effective way, which would be able to produce enough ventilators in order to meet the sort of demands of this crisis." So we're going to have to see what happens. If I had to guess, I do think that Donald Trump is going to invoke and use his powers in the coming days. And being that, it is obviously a positive sign to see, you could argue in some sense, a positive sign to see that companies, corporations, Elon Musk, et cetera, are at least willing to, do this production. So if Donald Trump does invoke those powers, they will be, they're not going to fight him in court over it. So that's sort of the, halfway plus thing, even though you can, as Benjamin Dixon did, rightly criticize and be like, well, hey, we know there's a shortage already, so why aren't you already producing? Why are you dragging your foot? Why are you waiting for the president to take the lead? Why don't you take the lead? So you can rightly criticize them a million different ways to Sunday, but at the very least, it does look like they won't be providing any kind of legal obstacle for the president if he does use those, does finally stop dragging his feet and finally, invokes those powers in the necessary way. Obviously, this is something that we're going to need to see. This is something that is absolutely necessary. We need to stop this pandemic as much as possible. I mean, guys, the economy, again, is completely falling off a cliff. Recession, I mean, this is possibly going to be far worse than the Great Recession. It's not looking good at all. I hope Donald Trump uses his powers very shortly. So anyway, that's the video. If you liked it, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thanks.